everyone, it's Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore here, and welcome to the Music Masterclass. So this is my Thursday series where we talk about making music. We talk about composing, arranging, improvising, all these different things that are having to do with music itself. So I am really looking forward to this month and digging in a bit more to this project that we're working on in the music engraving workshop. That and the musicianship skills workshop, two related workshops where, whoa, I apparently turned on the loop. That's, or maybe I just hit space twice. Anyhow, so we're going to be looking at the idea of doing Christmas songs, creating good lead sheets for them, and talking about what that means, and talking about what it's going to mean to create them and to play from them, and all these things that have to do with that type of playing, where you just have a melody and some chords and lyrics, and you go with it. So before I go any further, though, I do have to show you something. I already, just because I'm just silly happy about this. So people have been commenting lately that, the exposure on my keys is kind of washed out and it's hard to see the difference between the keys. So after a lot of thinking about what the problem is, and I know enough about cameras to know it has to do with exposure, I found my solution. And it's this piece of paper hung right on top of my camera, and it just basically puts blinders. Because my camera right now is otherwise really showing it's covering like the top of my head and the keyboard and all this black stuff that's causing it to overexpose the keys. So by putting blinders on it, so it's only looking at the keys, then it exposes better. So there's my 5-cent solution to that problem. So anyhow, I want to talk about this process of creating lead sheets for songs, and we're going to do maybe some exercises today where we try things ourselves. So let's see. What we're gonna do, is it a replay? No. I just gave you that same demonstration on Tuesday because it just makes me so happy to find little solutions like that to life's problems. So Dean, you've posted some lead sheets here that we're going to take a look at in a little bit. But I'll have some comments that I want to make first overall. But I am going to pop one of these up here just to be able to talk about what we even mean by a lead sheet. So this is what we mean, right? It's a melody. We've got the melody. We have chord symbols, and we have lyrics. So this is what we're talking about, and then there's decisions that we get to make about this. Like if you look at the original original sheet music, the usual 4-part SATB hymn arrangement that is in a million hymnals out there, you can sort of deduce some chords from that, and then the question is are those going to be the most appropriate chords? So this whole process of figuring out melody, figuring out the chords that we want to use, and this is what the introduction video that I posted on Monday is kind of having to do with. I'm not giving you the exact way we're going to go about picking these chords, but I go into a lot of detail about why it's an issue, why it's something we want to think about. Let me get my comment window pinned over here. All right, here we go. I'm gonna use this as an example, and then later on, Dean, if you're up for it, I can come in and have you give some comments about it too. But I want to use this as an example of a few different things. So first of all, the idea of learning a melody by ear, right? I mean, if you have taken any of the other, gone through any of the other lessons that I've done on ear training, or just on any ear training on your own in any regard, you probably have some methods in your mind for how to go about picking a melody out by ear. But this is what I'm going to recommend. I'm going to recommend that we try to do melodies by ear for a number of reasons. But the biggest one is it's a musical skill that I want everyone to have, and I want people to learn it. So I'm going to kind of go through the process here. I got my eyes closed. And with my eyes closed, I'm going to go through this process. So I remember that he has it in the key of D and starting on F sharp. So right off the bat, there are two important questions. What key are we going to transcribe this thing in, and what is the first note in that key? I'm actually not going to use the key of D when I do this. I'm going to use the key of C. And I talk about this a little bit in the video that I did earlier about choosing keys. And let me give you some my advice on keys. If you play the guitar, now first of all, if you're a accomplished classical guitarist or accomplished jazz guitarist, the things that I'm talking about don't really apply here. But your average everyday person who has bought a guitar, taken a few lessons, maybe learned some shapes from a book, there's some keys that are going to be easier than others to play in. The key of C, G, D, and A, maybe the keys with basically no sharps up to maybe 3 sharps are the easy keys on guitar. And those are the keys that don't require you to use bar chords, because bar chords are a thing, right? This idea that I don't know if you know guitar, but it's this thing where you got to lay your finger across the fretboard and then put your fingers here, and for a skilled guitar player, that's nothing. That's okay. It's a given that you're going to use bar chords, but for a lot of guitar players, that's sort of hard, and we want to avoid those. And so that's one reason we're going to choose keys that don't require bar chords. And Colleen, your question about yeah, I mean, you can do whatever you want for your own version of this and expand on it how you want. But I am going to want to collect, have people actually turn in, and I'm going to make maybe a giant PDF of everyone's stuff. We'll see what we get. But of the simple version, and I want to kind of coerce them to look similar, like they were all produced by the same person, or at least all edited by the same person, which may be me. I will enlist help from other people. So I'm looking for a sort of consistency in how these lead sheets are presented, a certain level of complexity of the chords. So when we talk about keys, we're looking for keys that are easy on guitar, because the idea of these lead sheets is I want to encourage, like when people are getting together to sing these songs, to have accompaniment and have it be easy for a lot of people to provide. And not have it require a professional guitar player or a professional pianist to accompany, or a ukulele player for that matter. I want it to be something that an average person can pull off, and with minimal training on that instrument, be able to play these pieces. So that is my goal. Bar chords are they're possible, but they're hard. They're physically difficult. And the other thing that happens is a lot of these songs, if they come from a hymn background, like this one does, right? It's a hymn basically. The original chords probably changed like almost every beat. Like it was. I'm just making those up. That's not the chords. I just tried to make up something. But it probably had like chords changing almost every beat. And so we're going to want to simplify the chords so we're not having to do this contortion on the guitar, because that's just not appropriate accompaniment. That's how you arrange 4/4 voices, but it's not how you arrange when you're creating a lead sheet. And so we have to divorce ourselves from our conception of what the original harmony was. And so, but it's still going to be the case that a lot of these pieces are maybe going to need to have chords change a little more often than they otherwise would. All the more reason to avoid bar chords. So avoiding bar chords tells us we're not going to want F. The chords, by the way, that are bar chords on guitar, F is a bar chord. So any key that has an F in it is like the key of C has an F major in it. That's a little complicated. So the key of G does not have an F chord in it, and then on anything that has more flats in it, basically, than F, it requires a bar chord. So an F, if we think about an F major scale having 1 flat, B flat has 2 flats, E flat has 3 flats, anything on that side of the circle of fifths requires bar chords. On the sharp side, maybe someone who plays guitar could tell me if a B chord literally requires a bar or if it just requires a lot of fingers. It might just require a lot of fingers to play a B triad on the guitar. I haven't done the math on that and figured it all out, but that's why I didn't include E as one of the easy keys. It is a common blues key. I will grant that, and but for simplicity's sake, I want to avoid even having to play B chords, I think. But a B7 is what the 5 chord in the key of E would be. If we can play a B7 easily, then E could be an okay key. But the problem, okay, so B does require a bar. I kind of figured it would because it's got sharps in it, multiple sharps in it. All right, but then here's the thing. That's guitar, and that's all well and good. But on the flip side of this, we want to consider other instruments. And when it comes to the band instruments, the transposing instruments, well, band instruments like flutes and clarinets and oboes and saxophones and trumpets and trombones, those are band instruments. The ones that are commonly used in jazz are saxophones and trumpets and trombones. Saxophones and trumpets have to transpose everything into keys that have more sharps. So in general, 2 more sharps. So if you write a piece in the key of C, then it's going to be in D for trumpet or for tenor saxophone. If you write a piece in the key of D, it's going to be E for those. And that's asking a lot. Now you're asking them to play a lot of accidentals. And again, when we're talking professional musicians, not a big deal. But if we want to keep things relatively simple, then we want to avoid writing in keys with a lot of sharps. Because then by the time those instruments transpose, it's a lot of sharps. And more than that, because those keys are not comfortable for trumpets and saxophones, jazz is almost never done in those sharp keys. You don't see a lot of jazz played in the key of D or A or E because that makes it really hard for the trumpets and the saxophonists. And as a result, jazz pianists don't get a lot of experience playing in D or A. I mean, you do if you play in other styles of music, but D and A end up feeling hard to a lot of jazz pianists, or for that matter, jazz guitar players if they are mostly playing jazz, because they're not comfortable, they're not familiar. We don't have in our fingers like all the good voicings in those keys. And so we don't want too many flats because that makes it hard for the beginning guitar players. We don't want too many sharps because that makes it hard for the jazz players. So we're going to really aim right down the middle. So when I look at this piece in the key of D, I'm like, okay, so we're going to have to like do some fiddling and think about keys and all. But in any case, I'm going to not worry about this in D right now. I got my eyes closed again, and I'm going to think about the key of C. And so here's my process. I'm going to think about a C scale, and then I might, see, the thing is, I have to even know what the first note is. And this is the thing, and I've talked about this before when talking about the idea of melodic dictation, which was like one of the very first lessons in the musicianship skills workshop, figuring out what the first note is. And sometimes I'm like, and then you, Gloria Deo. And then you want to sing through the whole song, and then imagine what if you're going to sing another verse. Then sing that note. That's how you're going to find it. Then, bam, ho is the last note of the song. Bam is the first note of the song. 1, 2, 3. So I know it starts on scale degree 3. And so I'm going to go through this just with my eyes closed again, just to kind of emphasize outline my process a little bit. You won't be necessarily as good as I hopefully will be at this, but I'm going to maybe make some mistakes along the way and talk through them. So, angels we, and then I know there's a little leap here, and I'm pretty sure it's that. Da, 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 da. Same note again. Da, 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 yeah. Da, 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 da. And then back to that same note again. Da 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 da. There's a big leap down there. Now, I would have to think about how big that leap down is, but I'll tell you what I'm banking on. I'm banking on the fact that I'm pretty sure it's the 5 chord, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a G. I don't know if it's a perfect fifth below me or a perfect fourth below me. I'm not singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or whatever to try to figure out what that interval is. I'm banking on the fact that I'm pretty sure that leap is to scale degree 5. Bum, ba bum, there it is. And now we come back to the tonic, ba da 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 dum, and then we go back to that note. Da, 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 da. Am I even singing that song right? Um, so I think I did that song right if I'm looking at it, and I'm looking to see his version here. To what extent does it match mine, except a step off? And yeah, it does. Oh, yeah, and Angels from the Realms of Glory is, I wasn't familiar with that title, but it came up last year in the jazz piano course that I ran, and someone did the song with those lyrics, and it was a subtly different melody, right? It was a similar melody, but it was subtly different. Some of the differences were in the first few measures there. But in any case, this is a song that we know in the United States, anyhow. So, in my version of what I just did, yeah, so I think I got it all right. There were only 2 decisions that I had to make, because most of it was all steps, right? There were 3 decisions. One is, what is the first note? Duh, and once I found the first note, that decision is done. Bum, 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 bum. I had to decide how big that little leap was there. And I just sort of guessed it at about a third, and I also kind of guessed that, well, it's the 1 chord. C, E, G. If you know the 1 chord and you know you're on the 1 chord, you can kind of guess that your leaps are going to be within the 1 chord. These are all the little tricks that you want to know. You want to think about what these chords perhaps are. When does it feel like a 1 chord? When does it feel like a 5 chord? And that is why all of these skills are related. Getting the melody by ear, getting the chords by ear, figuring out the chords that work with the melody. These are all related skills. And if you kind of cheat one of them, you're actually cheating them all, is how I would put it. So I had to think about what that first note was going to be. I had to think about what that first little leap would be. So there's 2 decisions I have to make off the bat. But then after that, just go back to the same note. And if I had been off, I would have figured it out by the time I reached that note, because I'd be like, wait a minute, I should have been on C. That's the end of the phrase. I expected it to come back to the 1, and I'm not on the 1. That would have been my sanity check. But these are all steps. Boom. That was the 3rd decision I had to make. How big was that leap down there? So I think of learning these pieces by ear as a process of decision making, making certain decisions. What note you're starting on, how big this leap is there, how big that leap is there. But other than that, there's not a lot of decision making in there. It's the melody's going up by step, you go up by step. It's relatively hard to mess that up, especially if you plunk it out in the key of C. When you plunk these songs out in the key of C, then it's really easy to stay in the key of C. And then when your ear tells you, oh, wait a minute, this note is going outside the key, well, now we visit the black keys, right? So I'm a big fan of working out melodies in the key of C, because it really simplifies things. But then, is C really going to be the key we want it in eventually? Maybe, maybe not. So anyhow, I want to try this a little bit. I want to take a few minutes right now, so that those of you who have access, well, even if you don't have an access, I'm going to do this without the instrument. Okay, we're going to pick another song. I want someone to name a song in the chat that we all know. Okay, and all know is hard to know, because I would have thought this was one we all knew, but some people are like, well, I knew it by this other title, and the melody's a little different. But let's try our best to pick a song that most of us know. Let's not use Jingle Bells, because I used that one last year. Someone name a song, and we're all going to try to get this thing by ear in the next few minutes. Oh Christmas Tree. There we go. All right. So, Oh Christmas Tree. And we're going to do this in the key of C. So, Oh Christmas Tree 1, it got in first. So we're going to use Oh Christmas Tree, and we're going to all try to figure this thing out together. I want to talk through the beginning so that we get that first note, because getting the first note is half the battle. That's not half the battle, but it was a third of the battle in that piece there. I said there were only 3 decisions. One was, what is the first note? So if we're going to sing, so if I play that chord and then you try to sing with it, I want everyone to try to sing Oh Christmas Tree there. So I'm mouthing the words. I want you to sing Oh Christmas Tree. And try to sing that in the right pitch. Oh Christmas Tree. If you try to start with C, Oh Christmas Tree, that's not right, right? Something in your brain wants to click to say that it's Christmas tree. That is the C. Oh Christmas Tree. So your first note is G. You can't totally take this to the bank, but I will say the vast majority of songs are going to start on C, E, or G if they're in the key of C, because the vast majority of songs start on the 1 chord. Yeah, when I say vast majority, 70% maybe. There's still going to be 30% that start somewhere else, but a whole lot of songs start on C, E, or G. So, Colleen, yeah, absolutely, that's a G for your first note. So, G, C, C, C are the first few notes. That said, I want everyone with let's level the playing field here. Let's not reference an instrument at all. Let's not reference MuseScore at all. I want, in fact, I'm going to go grab my manuscript paper. All right, I got myself some manuscript paper here, and tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you my process a little bit, and then I want you to try the same thing. You don't even need manuscript paper for this. In fact, I'm going to show you with letters. I'm going to go G, C, 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 like that. Can you read that? Yeah. Close enough. It's a G and a C and a C, right? G, C, C, C. If you do have manuscript paper, I'm going to do G, C, C, C. Essentially the same thing. Yes, I'm a lefty. So I don't have stems on it. I don't have anything. I'm just putting some dots on the page to show me, what my pitches are. And I'm going to try to write out that melody. So, meanwhile, I want you all to try it too. We're all going to do this together. Go. So, that's what I'm doing. I'm just putting dots on the page. Just putting dots on the page. So I got dun, 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 dun. I hope you all are doing this right now. All right. So I have my version done. I'm not going to assume everyone else does, but I am going to show you what it looks like. It looks like this. I did the first line, and then for the second line, I'm like, it's the same thing, right? So I just did a, and then I wrote out the third line, and then for the last line, I just put A. The form of this is A, A, B, A, right? So I didn't have to write it all out. I really just wrote out 2 phrases. Yeah, well, I don't want you to see the notes because, I'm not ready to give answers yet. I want people to keep thinking about this a little bit. Meanwhile, I'm going to play it. But I'm going to hide my hands. So I was playing from what I wrote. That's how I hear that melody in my head. So one question already is going to be if anyone actually hears the melody differently, because yeah, we might learn a note or two different in how we learn a song like that that's been around for a long time. There's different versions. But I'm going to give people, just keep working. I'm going to stop talking. I'll play it one more time. Kind of a random little comment here, but I'm going to put it out there. Did you see me cheat my, like when I got to the bridge, I kind of, yeah, and I realize that you can do it on the piano because then you can use some trial and error. But this makes you think a little bit. It really makes you think. And if you think about it, so Colleen, this is especially relevant for you. When we're improvising on our instruments, we're using our instruments, but we're using them to play what we're hearing in our head in real time. There's no going back and fixing wrong notes, right? If you don't play the note that you intended, tough, it already came out. So developing that skill of playing what you intended the first time, no trial and error, is great for improvisation. So there you go. So what I was going to say about cheating is I went, and when I came to the bridge, I knew what note I wanted it to be, but I doubted myself whether I was actually going to physically play that note correctly, like because I'm not looking at my keys, and so I kind of went and looked at my hand so I could find the note. I work enough with blind musicians to always wonder about that. To what extent a blind pianist struggles finding large intervals. And in my discussions with them and in my observations with them, I've come to realize that yeah, that can be a struggle, but they're using exactly the same kind of tricks that I would use if I didn't lift up the book. In other words, if I want to do this with my eyes closed, now I know I want to reach up and get a G, but I'm not sure exactly where that G is. But I'm kind of sliding up to it until my hand feels like I think I've found it. And when I'm watching, like I've had two different blind piano students that I've worked with, and worked with enough other, there's a lot of, there's a fair number of blind jazz pianists. It seems to be a thing, and so I encounter them and hang out with them some, and you see that sort of thing happening a lot, feeling the keys around a little bit to kind of gauge how high I'm moving. Anyhow, it's a thing, and sometimes you miss, and that's just the way it is. So, yes, that interval was only a fifth. Now, it's interesting that often people miss the other way. When there is a leap of an octave, people think it's not a leap of an octave, like famously Happy Birthday. Almost everyone trying to get Happy Birthday by ear gets the Happy Birthday, dear so-and-so wrong. Happy Birth is an octave, but almost everyone undershoots that on their first try playing that song by ear. I also now am thinking about another song, Let It Snow. Oh, the weather outside. That is an octave too. And I think many people trying to play that by ear would undershoot it. They would guess a fifth, guess a sixth, and be off. But eventually you figure it out. But, okay, so let's talk about if you, okay, and see you later. If you try to play it, oh, the weather. If you go, oh, the weather, oh, I'm not playing the right note. So if you're literally playing it on the piano, you'll know right away you got the wrong note. But what if you're doing it by writing it out? G, G. If you thought weather was going to be an E, you'd go, oh, the E, E, D, C, B, A, and your brain would be going, wait a minute, I think I'm singing the tonic and I'm saying A, that can't be right. So you that is the sanity check I talked about earlier. You want to have this awareness of the note that you landed on when when you reach the end of the phrase or key points, like when you're on the tonic. Do you think you're on the tonic? So if I was not referencing the piano and I thought, oh, the weather was not an octave but a sixth, and I wrote G, G, and I wrote E thinking it was E, E, then I would start going down D, C, and I'd be going, wait a minute, C. No, C is down here. That can't be C. That's how you would correct yourself, by realizing you didn't end up where you thought you did. And that would tell you that you guessed wrong on your leap. So doing that away from the piano or away from any instrument is certainly possible. All right. So, not that I think you can read this, but I am going to hold up my answer. Is this readable? It actually kind of almost is, right? If I pull it far enough back that you can see all the notes, it might be too far to read. But oh no, we're G, C, 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 D, E, 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 D, E, F, and then leap down to the B, D, C, G, and then the same thing. G, C, 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 D, E, 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 D, E, F, B, D, C. I'm going to come back and talk about that B, D, C in a minute. And then that leap up, bum, ba, da, da, dum. When in doubt, walk it up. Da 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 do da dum. I want to get from here to here. Da 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 dum. Right. So bum da dum. If you don't know how far it is, walk it up. Bum ba da da dum. C D E F G. Now I know it's a G. G G E. If you didn't know that was an E, I could walk it down. D C just to make sure. E G G E. And then it's a little higher than the G. I guessed A. A, and then step down, and I'm back on the G, so my sanity check worked out. G, F, 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 D. Well, that other leap was a third, so this one's a third too. F, F, D, and then leap up to the G, and that does feel like a G. F, F, E, E. And then the last phrase is the same as the first. G, C, 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 D, E, 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 D, E, F, B, D, C. Now, I'm singing these with letter names because I can. We could just as easily do them with numbers or solfege syllables, right? Sol, do, 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 re, mi, re, mi, fa. It takes too much of my brain to think solfege, but numbers, 5, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 3, 3, 2, 3. No, that confuses me. I'm having to think too much to do numbers. I don't do well with either of those, frankly. I do better thinking pitches, mapping them in my brain with my eyes closed. I'm picturing my piano, and anyhow, that's me. So I would be thinking pitches. But yeah, let me talk about that one little phrase. Ba-do-da-da-da-da-dum. That's an interesting little phrase, right? Ba-da-da-F, and then that F leaps down to B. So, anyone who's ever taken a music theory course, including mine, will tell you that that leap is a little suspect, right? Leaps, what is that interval? It's a tritone, right? From F to B is a tritone leap. And they will tell you, voice leading wise, yeah, maybe don't leap by tritones. Well, this is the exact example of the one situation where most people would say, yeah, but that one's okay. Maybe we don't leap by other tritones, but that particular leap from scale degree 4 down to scale degree 7, and then we come back up to 1. Ba-dum, and then we resolve to 1. That's a common one. So that one there is from F down to B, counts as a diminished fifth as opposed to an augmented fourth. So a descending diminished fifth leap from scale degree 4 to scale degree 7 on the assumption that leading tone will then resolve. Um, that is a common situation. I remember noticing it in the song "But Beautiful." I'm having to think. I'm thinking that anyhow and that would be but beautiful to me is where that song is. So that also has that leap in it. It's not that uncommon. I think actually the Christmas song, Chestnuts Roasting Over the Open Fire, that one, I think that also has that same leap in it, doesn't it? Um, um, uh, yeah, the end of the A section has that same leap. It's a very distinctive tritone leap from 4 down to 7. Now, most of the times that 7 resolves right away, but in "O Christmas Tree," we do this thing that in jazz terms is basically an enclosure. We're aiming for that C, but we go below it, we go above it, and then we zero in on it. An enclosure in jazz terms. So, yeah, that is just a variation on that same idea. So, learning to recognize things like that. What does that sound like? That distinctive leap from 4 down to 7. That's one of the things that I clued in on when I was doing this. So, anyhow, curious now that we've looked at the answers. Curious to see in comments how people feel like they did on that, and what, if anything, gave you trouble, and how you resolved that trouble. Definitely interested in seeing some comments about how that went for you, figuring out that piece in, without having a lot of time to work on it, and without, hopefully without referencing an instrument. How'd that go for you? So I know the chat's always a few seconds behind me, so it's going to take a few more seconds for me to see some answer. Yeah, and I did notice, Dave, that your ending phrase, so yeah, here's that thing. Your F down should have been F down to B, and you got the idea that it leapt down, but you only went down to a D, and then you got the idea that it came up to D. Yeah, you kind of made up a little phrase there to get you to C. And that was basically because your leap down didn't go far enough. You leapt down to the D instead of the B, and then you kind of had to find your way to C from there. Now, the thing is, when it comes to improvisation, yeah, that's going to happen all the time. If I'm improvising, ooh, that's not right. I would have to dig myself out of that little hole. So if I'm improvising and I'm playing a melody and I hit a wrong note because I guessed wrong about the interval, tough. Like I said before, you can't take it back. You can't take it back. All you can do is get to where you're trying to go. Well, this is where I'm at now. I took a wrong turn. I got off the highway at the wrong spot. Somehow I got to find my way to where I'm going. And so we do those sorts of things always. So yeah, that tritone leap, right? That's the big gotcha, I think, of that piece. I got it because I knew that sound. And this is why this whole connection between the ear and the brain and knowledge of theory, just enough to let you know that, hey, I've heard that sound before, and then be able to put a name on it and then recognize it's that thing. I don't know how many of these things that I could put my hand, I could put my name on like that. I've talked about enclosure, right? That figure, that tritone leap down from 4 to 7. There's certain things like that, also harmonically, certain combinations of chords that I recognize and I can put a name on them or relate them to a specific other song. Oh, this is just like that other thing in that other song, and I know that one went this way, so this one must go that way too. We want to be able to learn to recognize those things, and by analyzing them enough to be able to conceptualize what's happened and put numbers to it or names to it or whatever, that's going to help us get it right the next time. Okay, so yeah, this is what I want people doing. I want you maybe going through multiple songs and plunking out these melodies and just practice doing that, because that skill in itself is important, right? Um, okay, yeah, there you go. That's absolutely true. Even in non, in ostensibly non-improvised music, wrong notes happen, and yeah, you could pretend it didn't happen and just go on or whatever. But figuring a way to make music out of it, that is the essence of improvisation, and improvisation isn't the exclusive territory of jazz, right? I mean, Mozart would have improvised also. So. Um, yeah, and the thing is, that's why I don't think tritone versus perfect fifth. You're right. It's um, if this is why I'm not thinking of that in terms of what the interval actually is, because I knew it wasn't a B flat, because B flat's not in my key, and my brain wasn't telling me I went outside the key. I also knew it wasn't a C. Bum. I know that note isn't the C because here's a C. I knew it was bigger than a C. So I didn't have to ask myself, is it a perfect fifth or a minor sixth or a major sixth? I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about, well, what is the scale degree I'm going to? How close to the tonic is it? So I'm thinking about things like that much more than I'm actually thinking about intervals. And that's why when I'm talking about this being a tritone leap, I'm barely aware of it being a tritone. I'm aware of it being 4 to 7, which happens to be a tritone, is really the thing that I would say. Yeah, and as far as not being able to go back in a live performance, I take it one step further. You can't ever fix a mistake. All you can do is make it worse. In other words, if you play a wrong note and then try to fix it by playing the right note, well, now you've just lost a beat also. So you've actually interfered with the time also. And people make that mistake practicing all the time. They will practice something, play a wrong note, and then stop the metronome and add an extra beat while I mean, not literally stop the metronome, but they will literally add extra beats to the measure. Well, I played a wrong note, and then I added an extra beat to account for it. I didn't fix the mistake. I made it worse by adding an extra beat. So yeah, you want to train yourself not to do that in your practicing so that it doesn't mess you up in live performance either. You figure out how to get back on track without going back, basically. Okay, so that is the stuff I want to talk about with melody, and I wanted to go through that example, that little exercise, and I want people to do this. I want you all to try to come up with some melodies, not come up with melodies, but write out some melodies by ear. But yeah, Dean, if you are still around, I'm going to invite you on so that you can perhaps talk a little bit about your chord choice and where they came from. And if you want to say anything else about the melody, but it's mostly the chords at this point for this that I would want to talk about. And yeah, Jim, it's definitely about selling it. It's about making that melody be your melody that you played that day, and maybe it's not what you meant to play, but it's what you played that day, and you own it. So, Dean's coming on board, yay?
Yeah.
Dean?
Yeah. Hi.
All
You hear
right.
me?
Yes, I do. And do you
Good.
hear any echo or anything?
No, it sounds
All
wonderful.
right, good. I did my testing before. I'm getting
Yes.
better at figuring out how to do this stuff. So
Okay.
yeah, so I looked at your things, and you look like you've done a really good job of this. First of all, as far as the melody goes with this, did you do this by ear, or did you because you ended up in the key of D? Where did that come from?
Well, you mentioned guitar.
Uh huh.
I'm my past. I majored in guitar. I
Ah.
chose D because the chords are very accessible. You
Mm-hmm.
mentioned the F chord in the key of C. It's a
Being
problem for beginners.
yeah, it
I can
is.
remember struggling with that and teaching people. Oh, you got to bend your fingers this way and that
Yeah.
way, and so I chose D simply because the D, A, and G chords are very accessible
Good.
in general. Although I think I did put in a C sharp diminished, didn't I, in
You do
there?
have that C sharp diminished chord, which is a
But
fine chord.
yeah, and it looks like I have a B minor too. Anyway,
Uh-huh.
I chose that initially because that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Uh, as far as the melody is concerned, I did that by ear. I've been spending 15 to 20 minutes per day over the last several months working on solfege.
Nice.
Got a long ways to go, but it's really helped me focus on the tonic and the dominant, and then I can relate the other pitches to the tonic and really pick them out quite quickly.
Yeah.
And so that's been a huge help. In fact,
Excellent.
if anybody's interested in what I've been using, can I post links?
Yes. Yes, you absolutely can.
Let me go grab that here.
Okay. And yeah, that idea of relating to the one and five, that's exactly what I was talking about when I was working out that one melody, the first melody that I did when I did this melody by ear. It was when I knew I had bum bum, whatever it is, Gloria. I knew that leapt down somewhere, but knowing that that was the dominant, that was the key for me.
Okay, I just
Nice.
posted this, and
Oh yeah.
it's
Yes, that
very
is.
linked. There's a link to the in that page. There's a link to the PDF of
Mm-hmm.
this. And there are many pages, over
Yep.
300 exercises. So you're familiar with that one, I
Yeah, I
guess, right?
used that one in one of the courses that I taught at
Ah,
college. Yeah,
okay.
because
Well,
it's a nice free kind of public domain, open
yeah,
source, whatever uh, ear training textbook, basically.
yeah, and so that's been extremely helpful. Just spending, like I say, 15, 20 minutes a day, almost every day, because I am bound and determined to conquer this.
Nice. Well, good.
And it's been very helpful to me. So.
Excellent.
And then the chords, I can hear better harmonically because I can hear better melodically. But I did have to experiment a little bit with the C sharp diminish
Yeah.
and such. I had to experiment a little bit with chords. Um,
I'm a little curious because I want to dig out. Oops, I misspelled sheet music, but I do want to see if I can grab uh, something that resembles like when I see yellow paper. I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's the one I want. Um, except this is okay. Yeah, so I thought that would be the case. That F would be the common key.
yeah,
So it's F F and then A minor. So it's 1 3 and then 2 5 1 is kind of the original chords. Okay, that's good to know, or at least the chords of this particular version of it.
and
So your
when you
chords aren't that, right?
no, that's right. When you gave us the introduction to this, you said let's keep it kind of simple so the
Yeah,
guitarist, the pianist isn't changing chords every beat. So
yeah,
I dropped it back to very raw, basic harmonies.
yes. Now you did, and yet you didn't, because like going to the five chord here didn't have to happen. It could have just been one.
True,
Could have all been a one chord, right? So,
true.
but you felt like it's got to change, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And and the thing is, if I were guessing at this, I would have not remembered. So it goes to 3 there. I wouldn't have guessed that. I might have guessed it went to 6. And
And that
then
works.
2 5. Then it would be 1 6 2 5 1 would be a very typical circle of fifths type of progression.
Hmm.
But I might have guessed that. So the idea is sitting on a D chord for 2 measures straight like that feels like not enough motion. And we know we want to get that 5 in there somewhere. Now, it could have gone like this and put the A on the downbeat
Yeah.
and then switch to the D there. Um, any thoughts about that?
It can kind of go either way, I think.
Yeah.
I think it probably does sound better reserving the A for the second measure and then
So
going back to D for the third measure and back to A. Uh,
and that is, I mean, the thing is, it could go lots of different ways. One observation that I will make about that is, oh, yeah, the Dean Slick is showing up for me. So I mean, I don't know, but every once in a while the chat doesn't process the link right. there's like a couple of general rules of thumb that I might give, and one of them is usually, like if this wasn't a hymn-based song, I would have assumed that this is exactly the right. What, it's not exactly harmonic rhythm, but the right position. In other words, the A chord I expect to be in a weaker position than the
Yeah.
D chord. And this accomplishes that. If the A chord were at the beginning and the D were at the end of that measure, then the A is in a stronger position. But in fact, that's really common in hymns. So
Hmm.
that's something I know about hymns is that they're often going to work out that way. Whereas if it had been "Oh Christmas Tree," which I guess maybe is sort of a hymn, but if it had been "Let It Snow," definitely I would expect this type of rhythm.
Okay.
So another thing to think about is the relationship of the A to the melody, that F sharp. Now, I'm fine with this. As a jazz musician, 13th, beautiful. But it makes me a little suspicious of whether that is the best choice there because it sounds a little too much like how a jazz person would play that. And so that is one reason I would be, yeah, there's a couple reasons I'd be looking at that and thinking, can we tweak this a little bit?
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, this is basically absolutely the right general pacing of things. Also, by the way, as a general thing, I will put out as a matter of consistency. I'm gonna make all my five chords be dominant sevenths. Why not? I'm not going to make all my chords be seventh chords necessarily because then it's too much like, we're doing a jazz thing. But I feel like the five chord hasn't been played that couldn't have a dominant seventh on it and be happy.
Okay.
So I'm going to say that for consistency's sake, that'll be a nice thing if we just decide to do that. So the rest of that section is more just back and forth A and D. So let's talk about that diminished chord here in your Gloria here. I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure that's not what I've heard before. But I also am pretty sure it's going to work. So what was your ear was just telling you? Let's go there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I,
It
I, I wasn't happy just doing a four chord there. It
ah
just, yeah,
yeah.
the four chord doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it totally fits the melody, but it doesn't feel right for the song. So again, I'm gonna like look at the actual sheet music in a second, but before I do that, I'm going to well first put it out for the chat. Anyone else who wants to say what you think the chords might be in those first four measures, because I feel like there is a commonly used answer here, and I want it.
Could it have been the two chord, except the A doesn't fit, but the second half of the measure it does with the G and an E.
Which are you talking about? This measure here?
Yes, the C sharp diminished.
Yeah. So if we went with a two chord, yeah, I don't
No,
feel like that's the chord that I'm used to hearing.
yeah.
I okay, so I want to just sing this to myself for a second. So I'm singing counterpoint with myself. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-da-dum, ba-dum, ba-da-da-da-da-dum. And now I want to know what are those notes I sang and what are they telling me about the harmony? Ba-da-da-da-da-dum, ba-dum, I sang a leading tone. So I'm hearing ba-da-da-da-da-da, boo-dum, ba-da-da-da-da, ba-ba-dum, is what I just sang there. And of course, we know the original arrangement has all that melisma going on and counterpoint with the other voices, and it's not what I just sang either.
Yeah.
But I'm stalling because I do want to see if someone else has some answers that don't just come from looking it up. But is what I'm saying sparking anything for you, Dean?
No. I'm
Okay.
kind of married. I'm kind of married to the C sharp diminished, I
Yeah,
guess.
okay, and that's fine. Yeah,
That's why you're here.
once you've committed to a chord, it's hard to hear another one.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with this chord. And if the goal is to come up with a personalized version of it, then by all means, that's a fine personalized version of this piece. But my goal here is to be a little more generic and yet not too generic. I don't know. I'm aiming for a particular type of middle ground that it's like I know it when I see it or when I hear it. So I'm going to play around a little bit, and I'm going to do it in D. Oh, okay. So here's ba boo da da ba ba dum ba da da da. Now that D ba da dum ba ba da 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 ba da.
Now we've got a circle of fifths going, it sounds like.
Yes, I do. Yeah. So bum bum
B.
ba yeah B ba da da E minor to A da da and then either back to D or to B minor. Either
Hmm.
way, that feels like is what I heard. Ba, da, da,
Yeah.
da, if you want that diminished chord, ba, 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 da, da,
Hmm.
da, 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 da. Something like that is similar to what happens in the this yeah, it does go to six. It goes right. It goes. But if it had been an F sharp there, it would have been what I had. That's that counter line that I was talking about there. That's in the alto part there.
Yeah,
So
the
I feel
voice. Yeah.
like this refrain is almost exactly what I did, except I made that six chord a secondary dominant. That is the only difference, really. So I'm talking about what they have is and then and then four. Oops, yeah, I'm trying to play in two different keys at once. And then five, bum bum, is what they have, 4 to 5. So, yeah, I feel like what they had, other than they have a plain minor six, and I'm like, we can make that a secondary dominant and get away with it.
Hmm.
This is the kind of thing I would be aiming for. It's pretty faithful to the original, but it has just that one little change that's kind of a pretty nice improvement. And I have to imagine that probably half the versions of this out there, half the arrangements out there probably do that also.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So
It sounds right that way.
so bum, da, da, singing through that counter melody is how I kind of came up with that because I knew that the counter melody was in there.
Hmm.
So that's another thing that we want to do in figuring out harmonies is figuring out the chord progression is actually think about the vocal harmonies when they are distinctive like they are in here.
Okay.
So anyhow, those are just some observations about this and about the process. And there's not like one recipe that we can always follow and get the and always get the right answer or anything. I see that Dan also mentioned the D going down to B. He mentioned that a while ago. But anyhow, yeah, thanks for doing this and those other ones too. And we'll talk more about the chords in the coming weeks. Okay?
Great. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. So let me come back over to my thing here. And I know you can't unhost yourself, but I can unhost
Bye.
you.
Okay.
Oops. Remove as co-host. I don't want to remove you as participant. All right. So thanks a lot, Dean. Thanks a lot, everyone, for hanging here and trying some things out. And let's go back to the beginning. And Yeah, thanks everyone for participating. And yeah, we're going to keep doing this every week. We're going to be looking a little bit more at this process of coming up with these kind of lead CD versions of Christmas songs and what's involved in getting the melodies the way we want, what's involved in getting just the right aspect of the chords to get the harmonies to say what we want to say without being too quirky but not being too uninteresting either. We're aiming for a particular middle ground, and I'm going to be kind of your guide for that. So definitely, if you haven't already signed up for the Musicianship Skills Workshop, I highly recommend that because that's where I'm posting some of the lessons here. Yeah, it's definitely decided it's looping, but that's okay. So anyhow, I will see you all next time. Thanks for being here.